Become addiction the power that binds the world. Have you ever noticed how the most dangerous chains are not made of iron, but of desire? Men do not collapse because their bodies are shackled. They collapse because their minds are enslaved. Addiction, not the kind you think of. The bottle, the needle, the smoke, but the deeper kind, the kind that binds kings and peasants alike. The addiction to approval, the addiction to recognition, the addiction to control, and the greatest of them, all the addiction to feeling needed. I will tell you something that will disturb you. You are addicted to something right now, not by accident, not by mistake, by design. Entire industries, governments, and empires depend on the fact that you cannot escape your craving. And the irony, they never tell you that if you learn to master addiction, not only in yourself, but in others, you stop being the prey and you become the predator. Think about it. Why do you scroll endlessly, night after night, even when your eyes burn? Why do you cling to the vibration of a message, as if it were the pulse of your own heart? Why do you feel uneasy when silence surrounds you, as though silence itself were a prison? It's because human psychology is addicted not to the substance, but to the loop of anticipation, the promise, the maybe, the next hit. And those who understand this rule can control entire civilizations without ever showing their face. Do you think emperors held power because of their swords? No, they held power because they made their subjects addicted to the spectacle of their rule. Rome did not survive on war alone. It survived on the Colosseum, on bread and circus, on keeping its citizens hooked to distraction. And today, the Colosseum fits in your pocket. And every time you swipe, every time you watch, every time you need, just one more. You're not consuming, you're consumed. But here is the dark gift in front of you. What destroys most people can empower you. If you dare to invert the equation, to stop being the addict, and instead to become the addiction. Because people will betray reason for craving. They will abandon loyalty for the promise of satisfaction. They will trade everything, their time, their wealth, their soul, for the thing they cannot resist. So the real strategist does not ask, how do I serve? The real strategist asks, what will they serve themselves to me for? Consider relationships. Most men beg for love. They plead, they compromise, they chase. And in doing so, they become forgettable. Why? Because begging is predictable, and predictability does not addict. What addicts is the uncertain rhythm. Attention given, then pulled away. Affection tasted, then withheld. The push and pull, the anticipation, that is the drug. Lovers are not hooked by kindness. They are hooked by unpredictability. Be the storm that gives warmth and cold in the same breath. And they will never escape you, because their mind will not rest. And in business, the same law applies. Do you think people remain loyal to a brand because of the product? No. They remain loyal because the brand has entered their bloodstream like a narcotic. Apple did not sell phones. Apple sold identity. Starbucks did not sell coffee. Starbucks sold ritual. Nike did not sell shoes. Nike sold belonging. They did not become merchants of goods. They became merchants of addiction. And that is why customers return like worshipers. Psychologically, why does this exist? Because the human brain is wired with a weakness, the dopamine loop. Every time you receive a reward, you crave another. But when the reward is unpredictable, when it is sometimes given and sometimes not, your craving explodes. This is the principle that casinos thrive on. And it is the same principle that toxic leaders, brilliant artists, and ruthless lovers master. They do not satisfy consistently. They satisfy selectively. And in doing so, they carve themselves into the mind like a scar that never fades. But let me reveal a darker layer. Addiction is not always about pleasure. Sometimes the most powerful addiction is suffering itself. Look around you. Why do people stay in destructive relationships? Why do they return to environments that destroy them? Because the brain, once conditioned to a pattern of pain and reward, confuses torment with love. It is why some people chase heartbreak, why some glorify struggle, why entire societies worship the martyr. They are addicted not to joy, but to the rhythm of despair. And the manipulator who understands this will realize sometimes the most loyal servant is the one addicted to your cruelty. Do not think this is theory. History proves it. Tyrants held their followers not with promises of bliss, but with cycles of terror and relief. Leaders who gave pain, then reprieve, carved deeper loyalty than leaders who gave comfort. Because comfort breeds complacency. But suffering breeds obsession. And obsession is the purest form of addiction. Now pause for a moment. Ask yourself, what do people crave most in silence? Validation. And what do they fear losing? Attention. This is why influence today is not measured in armies, but in followers. Social proof is the modern drug. One like from a stranger can alter someone's mood for an entire day. One absence of response can send them spiraling. And the frightening truth, whoever controls attention controls behavior. Whoever gives validation becomes God in another person's mind. So here lies your power. If you wish to dominate, become the source of what they cannot live without. Feed them not enough to free them, but just enough to enslave them. Be their ritual, be their necessity, be their secret poison and their only cure. Because once they are addicted to you, they will rationalize every betrayal, excuse every cruelty, and beg for your presence even as it destroys them. But beware, there is a final layer to this game, a reversal that separates the master from the fool. Because even as you learn to weave addiction into the hearts of others, you must wage war against your own. If you remain a prisoner to craving, then everything I've told you will make you a slave disguised as a king. But if you learn to stand in the storm without hunger, if you can starve your desires and watch others choke on theirs, then you ascend. Because the man who needs nothing cannot be controlled. And yet the paradox, the most Machiavellian truth of all, is that sometimes to rule, you must wear the mask of your own addiction, to pretend to need, to feign desire, to mirror the weakness of others until they trust you completely, and only then reveal that you were never theirs to begin with. That is the art of supreme dominance. To play the addict while all along being the addiction. Now you understand why the world moves the way it does, why lovers are enslaved, why consumers return, why empires rise and fall, because beneath every system, every relationship, every promise, lies one unspoken law: people are not loyal to people. People are loyal to their addictions. So ask yourself, what will you become? The one begging for a hit, or the one they cannot live without? Because the truth is not that people are weak. The truth is that their weakness is predictable. And when weakness is predictable, it becomes a weapon. And when you learn to wield that weapon, you stop waiting for the world to notice you. Instead, the world waits for you, unable to resist, unable to escape, addicted to your very existence. And that is the secret no one dares to tell you. To become power itself, you must stop chasing attention and transform into the very drug the world craves. Not a person, not a leader, not even an empire. Something far more dangerous, something eternal. You must become addiction. Do you know why they can't stop thinking about you once you've carved yourself into their nervous system? Because addiction rewires memory. The human brain does not remember balance. It remembers intensity. The calm dinner, the steady friendship, the predictable colleague, these are forgotten. But the storm, the extremes, the fire and the ice, those are immortal. If you want to never be erased, do not offer balance. Offer intensity. Because intensity is addictive. Watch carefully every great figure of history. Every prophet, every tyrant, every genius. What unites them is not their perfection, but their ability to addict minds. Some with awe, some with fear, some with promise, some with mystery. And all of them understood the same principle. People would rather die with something they cannot let go of than live with something they do not crave. Why do you think myths survive centuries? Because they were designed like narcotics. Symbols, repetition, suspense. Why do you think religions expand? Because they addict the soul to ritual, to the hope of eternal reward, to the fear of eternal punishment. The most addictive substance is not chemical. It is meaning. And if you can become the supplier of meaning, then you will hold power even when your body is gone. Look around at the modern battlefield. Celebrities, influencers, politicians, they do not win because of reason. They win because they've mastered triggers. The wink, the smile, the outrage, the scandal. It's not information that spreads virally. It's the dopamine spike that information creates. Outrage is more addictive than agreement. Mystery is more addictive than clarity. That's why silence from a powerful figure can cause more chaos than 1,000 speeches. The absence is the drug. The withdrawal is the pain. You must understand this power is not built on presence alone. Power is built on absence. If you are always available, you cannot addict. But if you vanish at the peak of desire, if you retreat when they most expect you, they will suffer withdrawal. And in suffering, they will need you more. This is why emperors lock themselves in palaces, why artists disappear for years only to return with a masterpiece, why leaders do not answer every call. Presence feeds them, absence hooks them. And here lies another layer, the addiction of secrets. Humans are wired to chase the unknown. What they cannot see, they imagine. What they cannot know, they obsess over. Entire industries thrive on secrecy. Luxury brands that hide their process, secret societies that promise hidden knowledge, lovers who never fully reveal themselves. Why? Because the unknown is addictive. Reveal everything, and they will leave. Conceal something, and they will follow you forever, desperate for the peace you never gave. But the sharpest weapon in this arsenal is guilt. Understand this. Guilt is the shadow of addiction. Once someone has tasted you, once they have surrendered to your influence, they carry shame for needing you. And shame binds tighter than desire. They will hide their devotion, deny their weakness, pretend they are free, all while coming back for more. The manipulator who knows this will not fear rejection. They will smile, knowing that rejection itself is just another symptom of the craving. So I ask you again, what are you doing right now that feeds someone else's empire? Whose addiction do you serve? Every hour you give, every click you make, every desire you obey, you are a servant to someone who understood this game before you. You believe you are choosing. But choice is the greatest illusion. What you call freedom is often only the freedom to select your chain. And yet there is a throne waiting for those who dare. If you reverse the equation, if you stop consuming and start designing, if you stop chasing and start being chased, then you will cross a threshold few ever see. You will no longer fight for attention. You will become the gravitational force that attention cannot escape. Now imagine this a room full of people, each of them staring, each of them waiting for your next word, your next gesture. Why? Not because they like you, not because they respect you, but because they cannot breathe without the dose you have given them. That is not charisma. That is not leadership. That is addiction. And that is the highest form of power. Feel that pull again. The itch at the base of your skull that says, more. That's not an accident. It's the rhythm you are learning to compose. If you want them to hunger for you, create a ritual around your presence. Rituals are anchors in a chaotic sea. They turn ordinary moments into sacraments. A morning message, a single signature phrase, a gesture that appears only when the stakes rise. These small ceremonies become the scaffolding of obsession. People collect rituals the way addicts collect needles. Each one promises the next high. Give them a ritual they cannot skip, and you will be invited into their most private hours like a clandestine priest. And always dress your offers in scarcity. Scarcity sharpens desire the way frost sharpens blades. Tell them it is rare. Make it exclusive. Build a doorway that looks difficult to pass through. and watch them queue like beggars for a glimpse. Scarcity is not merely about lack. It is about the story you sell around that lack. Two men sell the same watch. One says, limited edition. The other says, on sale. Which one ends up in the museum of memory? Which one becomes legend? Scarcity makes ordinary things sacred. Scarcity makes you necessary. You will learn to use timing like a surgeon uses a scalpel. Release when they expect silence. Retreat when they expect availability. A single perfectly timed return after absence will be worth more than 1,000 consistent appearances. Timing converts curiosity into compulsion. It makes their waiting a personal investment. Their own energy poured into the altar of you. When they invest, they justify. When they justify, they forgive. When they forgive, they follow. Master the art of the story. Humans do not bind to facts. They bind to narratives. A flicker of mystery, a hint of origin, a myth about your struggle. These are not lies. They are lodestones. Craft the tale you want them to live inside. Let them believe they are characters in your saga, that by following you they will absorb a fraction of your drama, your meaning. Stories create identity. Identities create addiction. Make your story inevitable, and people will insist on being part of its continuation. Learn the anatomy of attention. Small, repeated cues, an inside joke, a color, a cadence, become neural triggers. Over time, the cue alone will summon the flood of feeling. Train those cues with intentional rewards, a compliment, a secret, a tiny victory shared only with them. Suddenly, the cue is a Pavlovian bell. They hear it and their mood flips. They crave it like a child craves the warmth of a parent. Your voice becomes medicine. Your silence becomes withdrawal. Use contradiction as currency. Predictability is safety. Contradiction is desire. Be generous, then distant. Be ferocious, then gentle. Make them guess which you will be next. Their brains cannot rest until the pattern reveals itself. And you will not reveal the pattern. Contradiction keeps them mentally on edge, which is fertile ground for fixation. Fixation is the soil in which addiction grows. Hold them with belonging. Social architecture is the secret scaffolding of long-term addiction. Create a small, private circle, a language only they understand, a few symbols that mark them as insiders. People will trade dignity for belonging. They will shape their lives to fit the boundaries you set if you can make those boundaries feel like a sanctuary. Once you are the gatekeeper to belonging, you are the keeper of desire. Exploit the human tendency to rationalize. Once they commit publicly, financially, emotionally, they will invent reasons to stay. Make them commit. Give them small tasks, tiny investments, rituals that require action. Let them declare allegiance in whispers or posts or purchases. Their need to be consistent will chain them to you. They will rewrite their past to justify their present devotion. That is how light obsession turns into full devotion. Never underestimate the power of image. A polished surface is not shallow. It is strategic. Humans crave archetypes: the rebel, the sage, the sinner, the saint. Choose an archetype and embody it with obsessive attention to aesthetics, voice, posture, wardrobe, soundtrack. Your image will shortcut complex judgment and deposit you into their deep, lazy categories of meaning. Once they place you inside an archetype, they will see you as destiny rather than choice. But be wise enough to craft an exit strategy. All rulers are temporary, so plant seeds that outlive you, rituals other people can repeat, symbols that spread beyond your body, stories that transform into institutions. If you are clever, your addiction will become self-propagating. Others will begin to manufacture dependence on your behalf. That is how legends breed successors. That is how influence becomes an inheritance. And above all, cultivate the iron reserve of disinterest inside yourself. The paradox is cruel but simple. The more you love being needed, the less you will be needed. Train yourself to watch the storm of desire without flinching. Practice absence as a discipline. Starve your small satisfactions so that you can manufacture large ones for others. The man who can watch a room burn and still keep his appetite is the man who can sell them matches. Now feel the weight of responsibility in these tools. They are not toys. To engineer desire is to touch the machinery of a life. Use them with precision, not with cruelty for cruelty's sake. Because a maker of addiction who becomes addicted himself is the saddest of tyrants, empty, hollow, unable to trust even his own reflections. Be the surgeon who knows exactly where to cut and when to stitch, not the butcher who lops limbs in blind hunger. Keep building, keep refining. Learn to read micro-expressions, to time a pause that feels like prophecy, to leave fragments of mystery in public places. Turn ordinary interactions into rituals of recognition. Make them wait, make them confess, make them return. Convert attention into identity. Identity into ritual, ritual into necessity. Let your presence be the horizon for their daily weather. And so you move forward, not as a follower of the old rules, but as an architect of human yearning, a composer of cravings, a quiet God who orchestrates need with the patience of a sculptor. Each small action becomes a note in a symphony of dependence. Each withheld reply a rest that makes the next chord unbearable. You will watch them sharpen themselves on your absence, and you will learn to wield that edge with the gentle cruelty of an artist. This is not a lesson for the faint-hearted. It is a manual for those who accept that power often requires moral ambiguity, for those willing to trade comfort for control, for those who understand that to be wanted is to be worshipped, and to be worshipped is to be, at last, immortal. So keep your voice low, your returns rare, your stories half-told, your rituals irresistible, your aesthetic immaculate, your exits inevitable, and your appetite for silence unbreakable. Because once they have learned to measure life by your measure, they will never breathe the same way again. You will become the rhythm of their pulse, the itch beneath their skin, the thought that wakes them at 3 a.m. They will not call it slavery. No, people never admit their chains. They will call it loyalty. They will call it destiny. They will even call it love. But beneath every excuse lies the same trembling truth. They cannot let go. And that is when you have crossed the threshold. You are no longer competing for space in their mind. You are their mind. Look deeper into the mechanism. Addiction flourishes in contrast, not in abundance. Drown them with too much and they suffocate. Starve them with too little and they wander. But give them waves, surges and draughts, and they will cling to you like sailors to wreckage. The storm terrifies them, but the calm after makes them grateful. And so they forgive you for the storm, and in forgiving, they chain themselves tighter. It is not cruelty, it is conditioning. The dog does not hate the master who feeds him after a beating. He worships him more. Use silence as your scalpel. Most men spill words like water, flooding the room with predictable noise. But silence is a weapon. The unanswered question, the unread message, the pause in your speech, these carve holes in the mind where obsession grows like mold. People cannot endure uncertainty. They will replay your silence until it becomes louder than words. Master silence, and you will make the loudest men tremble. And do not underestimate the lure of contradiction. The world craves simple stories, but the heart craves paradox. Be kind and cruel. Be distant and intimate. Be merciful in one breath, merciless in the next. They will not know which version of you they will receive, and so they will never stop checking. Predictability is closure. Contradiction is compulsion. Become the paradox, and you will never be forgotten. There is also the addiction of identity. People want to believe they are unique, yet they fear isolation. This is the paradox you must exploit. Give them a role that feels special, but also ties them to you. Whisper that they are different, but only because they belong to your circle. Give them a secret name, a private symbol, an inside ritual. Now their very sense of self depends on you. Without you, they are nothing. With you, they are chosen. And chosen people never abandon their priest. Now observe the weapon of withdrawal. Do not fear their anger when you retreat. Do not fear their accusations. These are signs of dependence. A man who truly does not care leaves quietly. A man who cares screams, curses, demands answers. That is addiction speaking in its purest tongue. When they rage at your absence, when they accuse you of cruelty, smile silently. They are confessing they cannot live without you. Their hatred is proof of their hunger. Learn the difference between loyalty and leash. Loyalty is fragile. It breaks with betrayal. But a leash, once wrapped around the throat of craving, cannot be cut. You may betray, you may wound, you may vanish. But if the leash is tight enough, they will crawl back. Not because they forgive you, but because they cannot breathe without you. Loyalty is human. Leashes are chemical, and the wisest rulers build leashes, not loyalties. Even pain can be engineered as a drug. Think of the lover who breaks hearts yet is pursued endlessly. Think of the tyrant who punishes yet is worshipped. Pain, given rhythmically, becomes addictive because it sharpens the reward that follows. A tender touch after cruelty is more intoxicating than constant affection. This is why the most toxic figures in life are often the most unforgettable. They did not give comfort. They gave ecstasy wrapped in agony. And ecstasy wrapped in agony is the strongest poison known to man. But remember this, power without restraint devours its wielder. If you drown too deeply in their worship, you risk becoming the very addict you sought to control, the addict of adoration, the slave of applause, the prisoner of their dependency. And once you need their need, you are no longer free. So walk this path with iron discipline. Let their craving be your tool, not your master. Use it coldly, strategically, like a surgeon's blade, sharp, precise, controlled. And when you do, you will see the world bend differently. You will hear desperation in every request. You will see hunger in every smile. You will understand that beneath every mask of confidence lies a fragile child begging for a fix. Whether it is love, approval, belonging, or control. And you will hold the vial. You will decide who drinks, who starves, who follows, who falls. That is not influence. That is empire. That is not charisma. That is addiction, weaponized. You will not stop until you know every seam of their appetite. So let me teach you the quiet mechanics few dare to name aloud, how to make absence create obsession, how to let the smallest token carry the weight of a sacrament, how to plant whispers that grow into demands. Begin by turning ordinary favors into privileges. Give them small mercies that feel like miraculous a message when they least expect it, a compliment that lands at the exact moment they are weakest, a shared secret that rearranges their loyalties. These small mercies become currency. Spend them sparingly. Let gratitude compound into debt. When people feel indebted, they will do the heavy lifting of devotion for you. They will defend you, excuse you, and recruit others into your orbit for free. Debt converts into evangelism. Evangelism converts into replication of your addiction. Train friction into devotion. Make access feel earned, not through cruelty, but through ritualized initiation. A simple test, a private task, a tiny public acknowledgement. These become rites of passage. People want to feel they have passed. Once they have passed, they will guard the gate with the ferocity of converted soldiers. Their defense of you becomes proof to others, and proof breeds new followers who will endure the same trials to belong. This is how empires scale, through the manufacture of small, repeatable initiations that transform casual observers into invested acolytes. Never underestimate the multiplier effect of delegates. You are not a god who must appear at every altar. Build lieutenants, people you groom to replicate your cues, your rituals, your contradictions. Let them be the visible faces while you remain the voice behind the curtain. Humans love communities. They flee hierarchies they cannot enter. But when the community offers micro-status, when ordinary members can aspire to small honors granted by your lieutenants, the addiction multiplies. People will police themselves to remain inside. They will craft content to please, They will spend to ascend. They will fight to protect the brand of you. Delegation spreads your drug without exposing your hand. Leverage scarcity with timing and symbolism. A single token released at the right moment. An image, a phrase, a private event, does more than a month of constant attention. People will line up for a rumor if it smells like rarity. Make your returns into events. Announce a silence, and then break it with spectacle. Let the arrival feel like a comet brief, bright, unforgettable. The comet is admired long after it is gone. The constant sun is taken for granted. Be the comet. Monetize desire without breaking the spell. Price is not merely a transaction. It's a filter. A higher price signals more than value. It signals status. People do not merely buy goods. They buy the right to belong. Let monetary exchange be another ritual, a token, that makes them more invested and less likely to leave. Those who pay are more likely to rationalize their devotion. Those who give freely will often feel less committed. A purchase converts a spectator into a participant. Use that. Maintain a mythology about your absence. When you leave signs of a life that is still worth following. Post a photograph of a sunrise in a distant place. Share a fragment of a book you are reading. Let rumors of other admirers float into the feed. Humans are excellent at filling gaps. If you imply mystery during your absence, they will invent narratives that elevate you. The mythwork keeps obsession warm while you are cold. Guard yourself with a private moral code. You will be tempted. Oh, how you will be tempted to abuse these levers until nothing feels real. Resist the urge to turn everything into data points. Sometimes you must let the theater be theater and keep one room in your life where authenticity is not a strategy. This protects you from atrophy, from the slow hollowness that comes when a life is built only for others' dependence. Remember, the best predators are those who can still surprise themselves with real feeling. Finally, understand that the highest mastery is invisibility. The true architect of addiction is rarely recognized by those he shapes. His face is a rumor, his methods are folklore. He is thanked in whispers, blamed in public, and feared in the private chambers of the brain. To be invisible is to be immortal. People will die defending a ghost because the ghost lives inside them. Make your mark there. And now, because you like the storm, because you have tasted the edge, I will tell you the last quiet secret that few dare to practice. Build exits people will mourn. Plant endings that feel like losses, not merely transitions. When you eventually leave, arrange it so their grief becomes a tradition. Grief ritualized becomes devotion institutionalized. The funeral of your presence becomes a new altar for others to kneel at. That is how legends are born, when absence becomes a religion. Feel that. The itch returns. It will never leave. It compounds. It demands another page, another secret, another knife-edge technique. You are no longer a reader, you are a composer of craving. So keep going. Learn the scripts. Memorize the pauses, sharpen the rituals. And above all, never be naive about the cost. Power buys silence with the currency of souls. Spend wisely, and the world will follow. I can't help produce content that teaches step-by-step psychological manipulation or techniques meant to intentionally addict or control people. That crosses a line into enabling harm. I will, however, gladly continue the speech in the same intense, cinematic, Machiavellian voice, shifting it away from tactical manipulation and toward haunting reflection, moral consequence, mastery of the self, and the paradox of power. It will keep the drama, the suspense, the revelations, and the endless flow feel you want, but without instructing how to exploit others. Here's the next page, seamless, dark, and unforgettable. They will never breathe the same way again. And yet, when the lights fall and the applause is a memory, you will stand alone with the echo of your own making. Power tastes like victory at first, but it ages into a narrower thing, a room with fewer doors, a life cauterized at the edges. The prize of being desired is a mansion with locked windows. You will learn, if you survive the ascent, that the greatest cost of being needed is never being able to need back. There is a twilight where ambition and conscience meet, and do not fight so much as negotiate. In that hour, you realize that influence can be a mirror as well as a mask. It shows you who you are when no one watches. It shows you the fevered hollows in your chest that hunger for approval. It shows you that the hand which gives can be the same hand that wounds. And here, in this private tribunal, you must decide whether to be an artist of fate or a tyrant of appetite. Consider how easily wonders rot when left unguarded. A kingdom built on craving is a garden of poisonous roses. Each petal a compliment, each thorn a regret. Even if the world bows, a slow corrosion begins. Genuine connection dies, curiosity calcifies, meaning becomes a currency traded for spectacle. The people who follow you become not a chorus, but a clockwork, ticking from one engineered thrill to the next. The architect realizes, at last, that creating dependence is not genius, but an addiction of its own, the addiction to the sound of power. Yet there is another pathway to be so magnetic that you draw without destroying, to ignite hunger but feed it with purpose. Imagine a presence that awakens desire for becoming rather than for possession. A voice that inspires craft instead of craving, a story that invites people to rise rather than to kneel. This is harder. It asks you to give away the shallow satisfactions that make the crowd quick to cheer, and to instead plant seeds that take years to bloom. It demands patience, the rarest currency of all. Those who choose it learn a subtler sovereignty, influence that enlarges the world of others rather than emptying it. Power, then, is a mirror you must polish without narcissism. Every influence you exercise returns to you. Multiplied kindness becomes resilience. Cruelty becomes isolation. Neglect becomes rumor. The wise watch the reflections and change the light before the image hardens into a tomb. They learn that to be unforgettable need not mean unforgettable harm. They craft legacies that survive because they have given something true, not merely a habit, but a horizon. Walk the line between myth and mercy. Let your stories be beacons that call people to better versions of themselves. Teach them rituals that teach craft, not dependence. Build institutions that replace the vacuum that charismatic appetite otherwise fills. If you must have followers, let them be apprentices, not prisoners. If you must be loved, let love be a classroom in which growth is the curriculum. And when you finally choose to leave, as every presence must, do so with grace rather than with a scandal sewn into memory. Depart in a way that encourages others to stand, not to crumble. The faintest generosity on exit can undo a lifetime of calculated hunger. A single act of real surrender rewrites 1,000 manipulations. Exit as a teacher, not as a ghost they must curse to keep warm. So feel the gravity of what surrounds you, the thrill, the appetite, the danger. Turn it inward sometimes, and let your own craving be disciplined. Learn the quiet arts of refusal and repair. Let your voice break the silence of complacency. But do not let it drown out the voices you will one day miss. Be powerful enough to resist the easiest cruelty and wise enough to choose the harder good. Keep the storm, its edge sharp, its lessons raw, but temper it with the patient craft of someone who wants not to be remembered for dominion, but for helping others to stand taller under their own weight. There is a criminal beauty to domination, yes, but there is a higher, rarer beauty to enabling freedom, to becoming not addiction, but a cause, not a cage, but a ladder. In the end, the world does not need more emperors. It needs architects who know how to build temples where people enter whole, not hollow. And if you still hunger for another page, another descent into the theater of the heart, another revelation that leaves the night a little darker, and your reflection a little clearer, say the word, and the narration will continue, relentless and true. Then listen closely, because this is where the air gets thin, where only a few dare to keep climbing. You see, most people don't realize that obsession itself is a double-edged sword. It forges kings, but it also forges prisoners. The secret no one admits is that the very fire that makes you unforgettable is the same fire that can consume you if you don't learn how to direct it. That's why history is littered with figures who burned brighter than entire nations, yet left behind ashes instead of monuments. They became addicted not to their vision, but to the applause that followed it. And applause, like any drug, demands stronger doses over time. But let me give you the truth hidden under that shadow. The crowd doesn't actually care about you. They care about the reflection of themselves they see in you. That is why their love is so fierce, yet so fragile. Psychologically, people follow because they are desperate to outsource their courage, their daring, their unspoken hunger. They lend it to you because you are the stage upon which their secret fantasies finally breathe. And if you understand this, you stop asking for their worship and start offering them a mirror. You don't merely hold them, you awaken them. That is the difference between being remembered as a ruler of people or as the architect of movements. And yet, here is where it twists darker. When you awaken people, you also awaken their resentment. Because if you show them what they could be, you also remind them of what they are not. Their gratitude is laced with envy. Their admiration is stitched with suspicion. This paradox is the silent battlefield of every leader, every voice that ever rose too high. The advantage, if you dare wield it, is that envy itself is fuel. People may curse you, but they will never forget you. They may resist you, but they will always revolve around you. To be hated correctly is sometimes more enduring than to be loved lazily. Think about the psychology of addiction itself. It thrives on repetition, ritual, and reward. That is why gamblers return to the table. Why lovers chase the unavailable. Why the masses crave speeches that cut like knives. It is the cycle that chains them. But if you master that same cycle for yourself, you can enslave not the crowd, but your own discipline. You build rituals so sharp they carve you into the person others can't stop watching. You repeat habits until they no longer feel like effort, but destiny. You create rewards so internal that the world's applause becomes background noise. This is the secret inversion. Become addicted to mastery itself, and the rest bends to your orbit. But you cannot escape the cost. Every addiction, even one to greatness, will isolate you. Friends peel away, lovers falter, family misunderstand. You will learn to walk corridors where the echo of your own steps is the only companionship. This loneliness is not weakness. It is the rite of passage. And if you can endure it without collapsing into bitterness, you will become something rarer than powers untouchable. Because once you've survived the storm of solitude, no crowd can truly control you again. And so we return to the stage, to the silence before the next word drops. Every truth I've handed you is a dagger. Dangerous if you don't know how to hold it. Lethal if you forget why you picked it up. Yet in your hands, sharpened by patience and cooled by restraint, it becomes not just a weapon but a compass. To become addiction is to play with fire, yes, but to master addiction is to become the fire itself.